You woke up this morning already behind. The alarm went off and you hit snooze. Not once, 3 times, 4. By the time you dragged yourself out of bed, the day had already started without you. You rushed through the routine, skipped breakfast, forgot the thing you were supposed to remember, and by the time you sat down to actually begin, your phone was already screaming for attention. 17 notifications, 23, 31, each one pulling you in a different direction. Each one demanding a response. Each one reminding you of something else you were supposed to do. Something else you let slip. Something else you promised yourself you'd handle yesterday, last week, last month. But somehow never did. And beneath all of it, that quiet voice. The one that's been getting louder lately. The one that whispers when you're trying to fall asleep. The one that asks, "When did you lose control? This isn't where you thought you'd be. You had plans. Real ones. Goals that lit something up inside you. Things you were going to start. Things you were going to finish. Things that would finally prove to yourself and everyone else that you're capable of more than this endless cycle of half-starts and good intentions. But somewhere between January and now, it all fell apart. The deadline you missed wasn't because you didn't care. It was because you ran out of time. Or rather, time ran out on you. The hours disappeared into email threads and meeting requests and tasks that felt urgent but weren't important. And when you finally had space to work on what mattered, you were too exhausted to think clearly. So you scrolled instead. Just for a minute. Just to decompress. Just to give your brain a break. 40 minutes later, you looked up and hated yourself a little more. The promise you broke to yourself wasn't dramatic. It wasn't about running a marathon or writing a novel. It was smaller than that. More personal. You were going to start that project. You were going to show up consistently. You were going to be the kind of person who does what they say they'll do. But you're not that person yet. And every day that you don't become that person, the gap between who you are and who you want to be gets a little wider, a little more painful, a little harder to ignore. You see other people holding it together. They seem focused, organized, intentional. They finish what they start. They don't apologize for forgetting. They don't drown in their own inbox. They move through the day with a kind of calm competence that feels like a foreign language to you. And you wonder, what do they have that you don't? Are they just wired differently? Do they have more willpower, more discipline? Were they born with some internal compass that keeps them on track while you spin in circles, chasing whatever's loudest at the moment? Or is it something else? Something you haven't figured out yet? Because here's what you know deep in your bones. You're not lazy. Lazy. People don't lie awake at night thinking about everything they didn't do. Lazy people don't feel this crushing weight every time they open their calendar and see the gap between their plans and their reality. Lazy people don't care this much. You care. Maybe too much. Maybe so much that the caring itself becomes paralyzing. You're not lazy. You're drowning. The world moves faster than your ability to filter it. Information pours in from every direction. Decisions stack up faster than you can make them. Every conversation opens 5 new browser tabs in your mind. Every notification is a tiny interruption that fragments your attention into smaller and smaller pieces until there's nothing left that feels whole. And by the end of the day, you're exhausted from doing things that don't matter, while the things that do matter sit untouched, waiting, judging, reminding you that tomorrow you'll have to try again. Except tomorrow looks a lot like today. And today looked a lot like yesterday. and at some point, you stopped believing that anything will ever be different. You see it in your relationships, the way your partner has to repeat themselves because you weren't really listening, the way your kids have learned to compete with your phone for your attention, the way your friends stopped inviting you to things because you cancel so often, not because you don't want to go, but because you're always behind, always trying to catch up, always one crisis away from falling apart completely. You see it in your work, the projects you start with enthusiasm that slowly die from neglect, the emails you mean to send, but don't, the ideas you have in the shower that evaporate by the time you sit down at your desk, the creeping suspicion that you're capable of so much more, but something inside you won't let you access it. You see it in your body, the tension in your shoulders, the exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, the way you reach for your phone the moment you feel bored or uncomfortable or uncertain, the way distraction has become your default state, your comfort zone, your escape from the quiet voice that keeps asking, "Is this all there is?" And the shame of it all is the worst part. Because you know better. You've read the articles. You've listened to the podcasts. You've tried the productivity systems and the morning routines and the apps that promise to change your life in 30 days or less. You've made the plans. You've set the intentions. You've bought the journals and the planners and the books about building better habits. But knowing doesn't equal doing. And trying doesn't equal succeeding. And wanting to change doesn't mean you know how. So you keep spinning, keep reacting, keep playing defense against your own mind while the world demands more and you have less and less to give. Until moments like this, moments when you stop and really see it, when the fog clears just long enough for you to recognize what's happening, when you realize that if nothing changes, this is what the next year looks like, the next 5 years, the next decade, a life lived in distraction, a life spent reacting instead of creating, a life where your attention belongs to everyone and everything except you. And that's not what you want. That's not who you want to be. But here's the thing they don't tell you about transformation. Here's the secret hiding in plain sight. You're not broken. You're overwhelmed. And there's a difference. Broken can't be fixed. Overwhelmed can be trained, can be taught, can be transformed through practice and patience and the right kind of understanding. The chaos you're living in right now, it's not going away. The world isn't going to slow down. The notifications aren't going to stop. The demands on your time and attention are only going to increase. But you can change. You can build something inside yourself that the chaos can't touch, an unshakable center, a quiet place where your attention lives and your focus breathes and your discipline grows strong enough to carry you through anything. By the end of this journey, you will not just survive chaos. You will move through it with intention, with clarity, with the kind of calm confidence that comes from knowing you can trust yourself to keep your promises, to protect your time, to choose what matters and let the rest fall away without guilt. You will learn to focus, not because the world gets quieter, but because you become stronger. You will discover that discipline isn't a personality trait you were born without. It's not reserved for people with more willpower or better genes or easier lives. It's a skill, a practice, a muscle you build one day at a time, one choice at a time, until the person you are today becomes the person you needed to be all along. This isn't about perfection. It's not about becoming some robotic version of yourself that never gets distracted or tired or overwhelmed. It's about becoming someone who can find their center even when everything around them is spinning. Someone who can start what they commit to and finish what they start. Someone who looks in the mirror and recognizes the person staring back. It's about reclaiming your life, your time, your attention, your power. And it begins with a single question. A question that will echo through every lesson and every practice and every transformation ahead. What if the chaos never stops, but you learn to move through it like water through stone? Inevitable, unstoppable, calm. What if you stopped waiting for the world to cooperate and started building the strength to thrive regardless? What if discipline isn't something you lack, but something you practice until it becomes who you are? The answer is waiting. The path is clear, and you're closer than you think. Let's begin. You know the feeling? You've lived it 1,000 times. You sit down to work. You open your laptop with genuine intention. Today is the day. Today, you're going to make real progress. Today, you're finally going to tackle that thing you've been putting off for weeks. You open the document. You stare at the blank space. You type a sentence. Delete it. Type it again. And then, almost without realizing it, your hand moves to the mouse. Just going to check email real quick. Just going to see if anyone responded. Just going to make sure nothing urgent came in. 3 emails turn into 7. 7 turn into 15. 1 requires a response. Another requires a decision. A third links to an article you should probably read. And suddenly 20 minutes have vanished, and you haven't written a single word that matters. So you close email. You return to the document. You try again. But now there's a notification, a message. Someone needs something. And you tell yourself you'll just respond quickly and get back to work. But the response opens a conversation. The conversation requires context. The context lives in another tab. And now you have 7 browser tabs open when you started with 1. Each tab is a promise. A thing you meant to do, a rabbit hole you fell into, a distraction that felt important at the time, but now just sits there, waiting, multiplying, mocking your inability to finish anything. And this is just the digital chaos. There's the physical kind, too. The desk covered in papers you meant to file, the coffee cup from this morning, the notebook where you wrote down that brilliant idea 3 weeks ago that you can't quite remember now, the book you're halfway through, the project you started with so much enthusiasm that now just collects dust and guilt in equal measure. Half finished is your default state. Half started, half committed, half present. You're in a conversation with someone you care about, and they're talking, and you're nodding and making the right sounds, but your mind is somewhere else. Replaying an earlier interaction, planning what you'll say in a meeting tomorrow, wondering if you remembered to send that email, trying to hold on to the thought you just had before it disappears completely. And then they stop talking, they look at you, and you realize you have no idea what they just said. So you apologize. Again, you make a joke about being scattered. You ask them to repeat it. And they do. But now there's something in their eyes, a flicker of hurt, or disappointment, or resignation. The look that says this isn't the first time. That says maybe you're not really here, even when you're here. And you hate yourself a little more. Because you didn't mean to drift. You wanted to listen. You tried to listen. But your attention doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to whatever's loudest, whatever's newest, whatever pulls hardest. You watch yourself scroll through social media when you swore you were going to start. You watch yourself reach for your phone during the commercial break that becomes an hour of nothing. You watch yourself choose the easy dopamine hit over the hard work that would actually move your life forward. And the shame of it is visceral. It sits in your chest like a stone. Because you know better. You know what you should be doing. You know what you want to be doing. But knowing and doing are separated by a chasm you can't seem to cross. The exhaustion is real too, the kind that has nothing to do with physical effort. It's the exhaustion of constant task switching, of starting 20 things and finishing none, of keeping 50 balls in the air while dropping the ones that matter most, of being interrupted every 7 minutes by something that feels urgent but isn't important. Your brain doesn't get to settle into anything, doesn't get to go deep, doesn't get to rest in focused attention long enough to produce something meaningful. Instead, it skitters across surfaces, sampling everything, mastering nothing, burning energy without creating value. And by the end of the day, you're wrecked. Not from accomplishment, not from progress, but from the constant fragmentation of your own consciousness. You collapse into bed exhausted from doing things that don't matter, while the things that do matter wait for tomorrow. Except tomorrow you'll be just as tired, just as scattered, just as defeated before you even begin. This is what distraction does. This is how it shows up. Not as a single dramatic failure, but as 1,000 small moments where you lose yourself, where your attention slips away, where you choose comfort over courage and distraction over discipline, and later over now. And over time, those moments add up. They shape you. They become you. You start calling yourself undisciplined. It's not a description anymore. It's an identity. It's who you are. The person who can't focus, the person who starts things but doesn't finish, the person who means well but can't follow through. You apologize for forgetting. Again. You show up late because you lost track of time. Again. You promise you'll do better next time. But next time looks exactly like this time, and the pattern repeats until even you stop believing your own promises. You stop making plans because you can't trust yourself to keep them. You stop setting goals because missing them hurts too much. You stop reaching for the big dreams because you can't even handle the small daily tasks. And slowly, quietly, without even realizing it's happening, you shrink. You become smaller, more cautious, more defeated. Not because you lack potential, but because you can't access it. Can't sustain the focus long enough to turn ideas into reality. The problem isn't just that you can't focus. The problem is that you've begun to believe this is who you are, that this is your nature, your wiring, your fate. Some people are disciplined, some people aren't, and you're one of the aren'ts. Except that's not true. It's never been true. But when you live in distraction long enough, the lie starts to feel like truth. The emotional landscape of this life is brutal. There's the anxiety of always being behind, of knowing there's something you forgot, something you should have done, something that's going to come back and bite you because you didn't handle it when you should have. The low-grade panic that hums beneath every moment, the feeling that the floor could drop out at any second because you've let too many things slip. There's the guilt of wasted potential. You know you're capable of more. Everyone has told you that your whole life. You're smart, you're talented, you're creative. You have so much to offer. So why can't you get it together? Why can't you be consistent? Why does it feel like you're running at 30% capacity when you know there's so much more inside you that never gets out? There's the loneliness of feeling like everyone else has it figured out. You look around and see people thriving, managing their lives, hitting their goals, building careers and relationships and futures that make sense, and you wonder what's wrong with you. Why is it so easy for them and so hard for you? What do they know that you don't? You're stuck at the starting line while everyone else is miles ahead. And the gap keeps widening, not because you're not trying, but because your trying doesn't translate into progress. Your effort doesn't compound. Your intentions don't survive contact with reality. And beneath it all, threading through every moment, is the question that won't leave you alone. When did I lose control? There was a time when you could focus, when you could sit with a book for hours, when you could work on something challenging without checking your phone every 5 minutes, when your attention was yours to direct instead of something pulled in 50 directions by forces you can't name. When did that change? When did distraction become your baseline? When did discipline become this impossible mountain instead of just a choice you made? And the follow-up question is even harder. Can I ever get it back? Because part of you worries that the answer is no, that you've crossed some invisible threshold, that the damage is permanent, that you've trained your brain to be scattered for so long that focus is no longer available to you. Maybe this is just who you are now, the distracted version, the half-present version, the version that tries but fails, the version that cares but can't execute, the version that wants more but settles for less because wanting isn't enough. The cycle feeds itself. Each day makes the next one harder. A distracted morning means you start behind. You waste the golden hours, the time when your mind is freshest and your energy is highest, on email and social media and low-value tasks that feel urgent but aren't important. So by the time you try to do real work, you're already tired, already fragmented, already running on fumes, which means the afternoon becomes a battle. You're fighting your own exhaustion, fighting the backlog from the morning, fighting the mounting pressure of everything you haven't done. So you rush, you cut corners, you do things halfway, because doing them fully would require focus you don't have. And because you rushed, you make mistakes. You forget things. You create more work for tomorrow. You send the email without proofreading. You skip the step you should have taken. You choose speed over quality because you're drowning, and speed feels like progress even when it's not. By evening, you're done. Completely spent. Not from deep work, not from meaningful effort, but from the constant low-grade chaos of a day spent reacting instead of creating. So you collapse. You scroll, you watch, you numb. You tell yourself you've earned it. You tell yourself you'll rest tonight and start fresh tomorrow. You tell yourself tomorrow will be different. But you can't rest. Not really. Because your mind is still racing, still replaying the day's failures, still anxious about tomorrow's demands, still carrying the weight of everything undone. So you lie in bed, staring at your phone until your eyes burn and your body aches, and you finally fall into a shallow, restless sleep that doesn't restore anything. And when the alarm goes off, you wake up foggy, groggy, already defeated, already behind. And the cycle starts again. A distracted morning leads to a rushed afternoon, leads to a sleepless night, leads to another foggy morning. Each day compounds the last. Each failure makes the next one more likely. The hole gets deeper, the climb gets steeper, and you're so tired you can barely see the top anymore. This is the face of distraction. This is what it looks like when focus slips through your fingers day after day until you forget what it felt like to hold it at all. And the weight of that realization settles in your chest like a stone. Heavy, cold, real. When did you lose control? And can you ever get it back? The question hangs there, unanswered, waiting. But before you can change anything, you need to understand something crucial, something that will shift the entire way you see this struggle. This isn't your fault. Not in the way you think. Not in the way you've been blaming yourself. Not in the way you've been carrying shame like a weight you deserve to bear. Your brain isn't broken. Your willpower isn't weak. Your character isn't flawed. You're fighting a battle that was rigged from the start. And once you understand why, everything changes. Let's pull back the curtain. Your brain is ancient, millions of years old. It was designed by evolution to keep you alive in a world where survival meant scanning for threats, chasing novelty, and avoiding pain. It was built for the savannah, not the smartphone. For predators, not productivity. For immediate danger, not long-term goals. And that brain, that beautiful, powerful, primitive brain, is still running the same software it always has. Every notification that lights up your phone triggers the same neural response as a rustling in the bushes. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a text message and a potential threat. It just knows. Something new. Something that could be important. Something that demands attention right now. So it alerts you. It floods you with a tiny hit of stress hormones. It pulls your focus away from whatever you were doing, because what if this is the thing that matters? What if ignoring it means missing something critical? This is your amygdala at work, your threat detection system. And it's exquisitely sensitive. It has to be. Because in the environment your ancestors lived in, missing a threat meant death. But here's the problem. You're not being chased by predators anymore. You're being chased by emails, by deadlines, by social obligations and work demands, and the endless stream of information that pours into your life every single day. And your brain treats them all the same. Threat, threat, threat. Respond, react, stay alert. Don't miss anything. Because missing something could be dangerous, except it's not. Most of it isn't dangerous at all. Most of it is noise. But your brain doesn't know that, so it keeps you on high alert. Keeps you scanning, keeps you ready to respond to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, until you're so fragmented you can't focus on anything that actually matters. And then there's dopamine, the neurochemical that drives you toward pleasure and reward. The system that kept your ancestors motivated to seek food, find mates, explore new territory. Dopamine doesn't reward you for having something. It rewards you for seeking something, for the anticipation, for the possibility that the next thing might be better than the last thing. Every time you check your phone, your brain releases a tiny burst of dopamine. Not because of what you find, but because you might find something. A like, a message, a comment, validation, connection, novelty, something. It's the same neurochemical reward you'd get from finding food when you were hungry or water when you were thirsty. Your brain can't tell the difference between survival needs and digital stimulation. So it chases both with the same intensity. And the more you feed this system, the stronger it gets. Every check reinforces the loop. Every scroll deepens the pathway, until your brain learns that distraction feels good and focus feels hard, and the path of least resistance is always toward the next hit of novelty. You're not weak, you're wired. And the modern world knows exactly how to exploit that wiring. Social media platforms employ neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists whose entire job is to make their products as addictive as possible. They study how your brain works and then design systems that hijack it. infinite scroll, variable rewards, push notifications, all of it engineered to keep you coming back, to keep you checking, to keep you engaged. Your attention isn't just wandering, it's being stolen. By design. By people who understand your neurology better than you do, and use that knowledge to profit from your distraction. And it's not just social media, it's everything. Email is designed to create urgency. Slack is designed to create presence. News sites are designed to create anxiety. Every platform is optimized to capture your attention and hold it as long as possible, because attention is the currency of the digital age. And you're paying with yours. You're trying to build discipline in a system designed to destroy it. You're trying to focus in an environment engineered for distraction. And then you blame yourself when you fail. But it's not just the technology. It's the entire structure of modern life. Your brain has something called cognitive load. Think of it as bandwidth, processing capacity, the amount of information and decisions you can handle before you start to break down. And that capacity is limited, finite, precious. Every decision you make drains it a little. What to wear, what to eat, which email to answer first, whether to attend that meeting, how to respond to that message, what to prioritize, what to postpone, what to ignore. By noon, you've made hundreds of micro-decisions. You've processed thousands of pieces of information. You've switched contexts dozens of times. You've been interrupted, redirected, pulled in competing directions until your cognitive bandwidth is completely exhausted. And then you try to do deep work, try to focus on something complex, try to make important decisions, try to be creative or strategic or thoughtful. But you can't, because you're running on fumes. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, impulse control, and sustained attention, is depleted. It's been working overtime all morning just to manage the chaos. And now it has nothing left to give. This is why the hard work feels impossible by afternoon. This is why you reach for distraction. This is why your discipline crumbles right when you need it most. It's not weakness, it's depletion. And the environment makes it worse. Open offices where you're interrupted every few minutes. Meeting cultures where your calendar is never your own. Always-on communication where you're expected to respond immediately to everything. A work culture that glorifies hustle but punishes rest. That celebrates burning out but judges anyone who sets boundaries. You're under siege, constant, relentless, and you're trying to maintain focus and discipline in an environment specifically designed to prevent both. But there's another layer, one that's harder to see, one that lives inside you rather than around you. Sometimes distraction isn't just what happens to you, it's what you choose, unconsciously, protectively, because chaos feels safer than clarity. Think about it. If you don't start the project, you can't fail at it. If you stay busy with small tasks, you don't have to face the big, scary ones. If you never finish anything, you never have to put it out into the world and risk judgment or rejection or the pain of not being good enough. Distraction becomes a shield. Chaos becomes a hiding place. You tell yourself you're too busy to write that book, too scattered to start that business, too overwhelmed to have that difficult conversation. And maybe that's true. Maybe you are too busy and scattered and overwhelmed. But maybe, just maybe, part of you is keeping it that way. Because as long as you're drowning in distraction, you have an excuse. You have a reason why you're not living up to your potential that has nothing to do with whether you're actually capable. And that hurts less than trying and failing. That hurts less than discovering that maybe you're not as talented or smart or special as you thought you were. That hurts less than being visible and vulnerable and subject to criticism. So you stay busy, you stay distracted, you stay in motion without direction, and you tell yourself it's not your fault. It's the world, it's the demands, it's the circumstances. And you're right, it is those things. But it's also this quiet protection, this unconscious strategy of avoiding pain by avoiding focus. Distraction isn't always the problem. Sometimes it's the solution to a different problem, the problem of fear, of inadequacy, of the vulnerability that comes with actually trying. And until you see that, until you recognize the ways you might be choosing chaos because it serves you somehow, you'll keep recreating the same patterns no matter how many productivity systems you try. This is the root. All of it. The biology, the environment, the emotional protection, the ancient brain meeting modern demands, the limited bandwidth meeting infinite input, the fear of visibility hiding behind the excuse of busyness. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not fundamentally flawed. You're a human being with a human brain trying to function in an environment that brain was never designed for. You're being bombarded by stimuli engineered to hijack your attention. You're being drained by 1,000 tiny decisions before you even get to the work that matters. And you're protecting yourself from pain in ways you don't even realize. This is biology meeting environment. This is the intersection of neuroscience and culture and personal history, all colliding in a perfect storm that makes focus feel impossible and discipline feel like a superpower only other people possess. But here's what changes everything. Once you understand the mechanisms, you can build different ones. Once you know that your brain is responding to notifications the way it would respond to threats, you can change your environment to eliminate those triggers. Once you know that dopamine drives seeking behavior, you can create new pathways that reward focus instead of distraction. Once you know that cognitive load is limited, you can protect your bandwidth by reducing decisions and eliminating interruptions. Once you know that distraction might be protection, you can get curious about what you're protecting yourself from and find healthier ways to feel safe. You're not fighting your nature. You're working with it. You're not broken. You're responding exactly as you're designed to respond. And that means you can redesign the inputs to create different outputs. The shame can lift now. The self-judgment can ease. Because this was never about you being fundamentally deficient. This was always about understanding how the system works so you can work with it instead of against it. Knowing the why doesn't solve it. Not yet. The patterns are still there. The habits are still ingrained. The environment is still hostile to focus. But knowing the why opens the door. It gives you a map. It shows you where the levers are. It replaces shame with strategy. It replaces judgment with understanding. And from understanding, everything else becomes possible. The question isn't whether you can get control back. The question is, now that you know how you lost it, are you ready to build it again? The path from where you are to where you want to be isn't a single leap. It's a journey. And like any journey, it helps to know the terrain, to see the stages ahead, to understand that transformation doesn't happen all at once, but in layers, each one building on the last. So let me give you a map. 5 stages that describe the evolution from scattered to centered, from reactive to intentional, from someone who is owned by their attention to someone who owns it. You don't have to rush through these stages. You don't have to perfect one before moving to the next. But knowing where you are and where you're headed changes everything. It turns confusion into clarity. It makes the impossible feel possible. Let's begin with where most people live. Stage 1 is the fog. This is the place of pure reactivity, of constant overwhelm, of days that disappear into a blur of tasks and interruptions and urgent demands that leave you exhausted but empty. In the fog, you don't choose your focus. Circumstances choose it for you. The loudest voice, the newest notification, the squeakiest wheel, whatever demands attention gets it, and what remains of you is scattered across so many directions that nothing ever gets your full presence. You wake up without a plan. Or maybe you have a plan, but it dissolves the moment you check your phone. You're pulled into other people's priorities before you've even had a chance to remember your own. Email, messages, requests, fires to put out, problems to solve. And by the time you look up, it's noon and you haven't done a single thing that actually matters to you. The afternoons aren't better. They're a scramble to catch up, to respond, to handle whatever got dropped in the morning chaos. You're always behind, always reacting, always one step away from something falling through the cracks. And when the day ends, you can't even remember what you did. The hours are gone. The energy is spent. But there's nothing to show for it. No progress on the things you care about. No sense of accomplishment. Just exhaustion and the vague guilt of knowing you could have done more if only you'd been able to focus. This is where most people live. Not because they want to. Not because they're lazy or broken or fundamentally flawed, but because the fog is the default state in a world designed to keep you distracted. It takes no effort to stay here. It takes tremendous effort to leave, but leaving is possible. And it starts with awareness. Stage 2 is the flicker. This is where the light starts to break through, not constantly, not reliably, but in moments, in glimpses, in days where something clicks and you remember what focus feels like. In the flicker, you catch yourself. You notice when you're about to pick up your phone for no reason, and you stop. You have a morning where you actually get something done before the chaos starts. You experience an hour of flow where the work comes easily and the distractions fade, and you remember why you care about this in the first place. These moments are gifts. They're proof that focus is still available to you, that discipline isn't some distant fantasy, but something you can access, even if only briefly. And as you pay attention, you start to notice patterns. You realize you focus better in the morning, or after exercise, or when your phone is in another room. You start to see the conditions that support clarity and the ones that destroy it. Discipline feels possible in the flicker, but it also feels fragile. One bad night of sleep and you're back in the fog. One stressful meeting and your whole day derails. One emotional trigger and all your good intentions evaporate. You're inconsistent. Some days you're on, some days you're not. And you can't always predict which is which or control what tips you from one to the other. But here's what's different. You're aware now. You're noticing. You're learning. And that awareness is the seed of everything that comes next. The flicker is where hope lives. It's where you start to believe that maybe, just maybe, you can change. That maybe this doesn't have to be your permanent state. That maybe the person you want to be is within reach if you can just figure out how to make the good moments more consistent. And that brings you to stage 3, the anchor. This is where intention becomes practice, where fleeting moments become daily rituals, where you stop hoping for focus to happen and start creating the conditions for it to thrive. In the anchor stage, you build systems. You design your environment. You establish boundaries. You make decisions in advance so you don't have to make them in the moment when willpower is low and distractions are high. You create a morning routine that protects your first hour. You turn off notifications. You schedule blocks of time for deep work and defend them like they're sacred. Because they are. You start saying no to things that used to pull you off track, not with guilt, not with apology, but with clarity about what matters and what doesn't. Focus becomes something you practice daily, not something that happens to you, but something you cultivate. You have tools now, strategies, methods that work for you, and even when you struggle, even when you fall back into old patterns, you know how to return. You know the way back to center. This is where trust begins to build. Not blind trust, not naive optimism, but earned trust based on evidence. You're keeping more promises to yourself. You're following through more often than you're not. You're proving to yourself that you're the kind of person who can do hard things when it matters. People around you start to notice. You're more present, more reliable, more capable. They stop making jokes about your forgetfulness because you're not forgetting as much. They start coming to you with important work because they know you'll handle it. But you still struggle. The anchor stage isn't mastery, it's consistency. It's showing up even when you don't feel like it. It's choosing discipline over distraction more days than not. It's imperfect. It's effortful. But it's real. And if you stay here long enough, if you keep practicing, something shifts. The effort becomes easier. The rituals become automatic. And you find yourself stepping into stage 4, the flow. This is where discipline stops feeling like discipline, where focus becomes your natural state instead of something you have to fight for. In the flow, you don't resist distractions. You don't even notice most of them. Your attention has been trained so thoroughly that it naturally gravitates toward what matters and filters out what doesn't. It's not willpower anymore. It's habit, it's wiring. It's who you've become through months or years of consistent practice. Your environment is optimized. Your phone lives in a drawer during work hours. Your workspace is clear. Your calendar is protected. Your routines are so deeply ingrained that doing them requires no thought. You just do them the way you brush your teeth or tie your shoes. You move through your day with intention, not rigidly, not without flexibility, but with a clear sense of what you're here to do, and the ability to do it without constantly battling yourself. People ask how you get so much done, and you don't really know how to answer because it doesn't feel like you're doing anything special. You're just focused. You're just consistent. You're just living in a way that supports your goals instead of undermining them. This is the stage where life starts to feel different, where the gap between who you are and who you want to be closes, where you look in the mirror and recognize yourself, where you trust yourself completely because you've proven over and over that you'll show up, that you'll do what you say, that you'll keep your promises. But there's one more stage, one that most people never reach, not because it's impossible, but because they stop pushing once they hit flow. They get comfortable. They think they've arrived. But stage 5 is where true mastery lives, the sage. This is where you transcend the need for rigid control, where discipline and ease coexist, where you can focus deeply when the work demands it, and rest without guilt when your body needs it, where you're so grounded in yourself that chaos can swirl around you and never pull you off center. The sage doesn't fight distraction, doesn't resist temptation, doesn't white-knuckle through discipline. The sage is simply present, fully here, fully alive, fully attuned to what this moment requires, and able to give it without reservation. You've done the work for so long that it's no longer work, it's just how you live. You don't think about focus, you don't think about discipline, you just are. Focused, disciplined, centered. Not as achievements you maintain, but as qualities you embody. In the sage stage, you move through chaos not by avoiding it or controlling it, but by being so deeply rooted in yourself that external turbulence can't shake you. You're like water through stone. Inevitable, unstoppable, calm. You focus when focus is needed. You rest when rest is needed. You adapt when adaptation is needed. You're flexible without being scattered. Present without being rigid. Disciplined without being mechanical. This is the person you've been building toward. Not perfect, not superhuman, but integrated, whole, aligned. Someone who trusts themselves completely because they've earned that trust through years of showing up. Someone who knows their own mind and protects their own attention and lives their own life instead of being lived by it. 5 stages, 5 layers of transformation, each one building on the last. And here's what you need to know. You don't have to master all 5 stages today. You don't have to race through them. You don't have to be anywhere other than where you are right now. You just have to take the first step out of the fog. You just have to notice one pattern, build one ritual, keep one promise, make one choice that serves the person you're becoming instead of the person you've been. That's all. That's enough. Because every journey begins with a single step, and every transformation begins with the decision to start. The fog is where you've been living, but it's not where you have to stay. The path is clear, the stages are mapped, and you're closer than you think. Let's keep moving. So now you know the stages. You know where you are and where you're going. You understand the biology. You see the patterns. You've replaced shame with understanding. But understanding alone doesn't build discipline. Knowledge alone doesn't create focus. At some point, you have to act. You have to take what you know and turn it into something you do. Something repeatable. Something that builds the muscle of attention one day at a time. And that starts with a single practice. One ritual that becomes the foundation for everything else. This is called the anchor practice. It's simple. Deceptively simple. So simple that your mind might dismiss it as too basic to matter. But that simplicity is the point, because what you need right now isn't complicated. What you need is something you can actually do. Something sustainable. Something that proves to you, day after day, that you can still control your attention when it counts. Here's how it works. Every day, at the same time, in the same place, you practice one thing with complete focus for 20 to 30 minutes. That's it. No phone, no interruptions, no multitasking, no exceptions. Just you and one deliberate action that requires your full presence. This becomes your anchor, your daily non-negotiable, your proof that no matter what chaos surrounds you, there's one space in your day where you are in control, where distraction doesn't win, where you keep a promise to yourself. And over time, this practice doesn't just change your day. It changes you. Let me tell you why it works. Your brain learns through repetition. Neural pathways strengthen with use. Every time you enter a state of focused attention, you're building the infrastructure that makes that state easier to access next time. You're training your nervous system to recognize what focus feels like, to default to it, to return to it. But here's the crucial part. It has to be consistent. Same time, same place, same ritual. Because your brain loves patterns. It's a pattern recognition machine. And when you give it a clear, repeated signal, this time, this place, this action means focus, it learns to respond automatically. The anchor practice becomes a trigger, a cue, a doorway into the state you've been struggling to find. And the more you use that doorway, the wider it opens, until eventually, sitting down in your anchor space is enough to shift your entire physiology into focused mode. No willpower required, no fighting yourself, just habit, just wiring, just the accumulated weight of all the days you showed up. It becomes your reset button, the thing you return to when everything else is chaos, the practice that reminds you who you are and who you're becoming, the daily evidence that you're not the scattered person you used to be, that you're building something different, something stronger, and maybe most importantly, it's a promise you keep to yourself every single day. And every kept promise builds trust. Trust that you'll follow through. Trust that you're reliable. Trust that when you say you'll do something, you'll actually do it. That trust changes everything, because once you believe you're the kind of person who keeps their word, you start acting like it in other areas too. The anchor practice becomes the center of gravity around which everything else starts to organize. But first, you have to build it. And building it requires 4 steps. Step 1. Choose the action. This needs to be something meaningful to you, something that requires presence, something that can't be done on autopilot or while distracted, something that matters. It could be writing, not checking email, not scrolling, but actual writing, creating something, putting words on a page, even if it's just journaling, even if it's just 3 sentences. The act of translating thought into language requires focus. It could be reading, real reading, not skimming articles, not scrolling feeds, but sitting with a book, a physical book if possible, turning pages, absorbing ideas, letting someone else's words shape your thinking for 20 minutes before the world gets its hands on you. It could be deep work, the most important task of your day, the thing that actually moves your life forward. Not email, not meetings, not busy work, but the hard, valuable thing you usually avoid because it requires too much mental energy. Do that first, when you're fresh, when you're uninterrupted, when you have a fighting chance. It could be meditation, sitting in silence, watching your breath, noticing your thoughts without being pulled by them, training the muscle of attention in its purest form. No output, no achievement, just presence. It could be exercise, movement that requires coordination, yoga, running, lifting, something that connects mind and body and reminds you that you're not just a brain floating through space, but a physical being capable of discipline and strength. Choose one, just one, not 5. Not a morning routine with 12 steps, one action, one focus, because you're not trying to overhaul your entire life right now. You're trying to build one unshakable habit that proves you can do hard things. Step 2. Protect the environment. Same place every day. Your brain needs consistency. It needs to associate this physical space with this mental state. So pick a spot, a chair, a corner, a room, a place that becomes synonymous with your practice. Same time every day, ideally morning, before the world gets to you, before your cognitive load is depleted, before you've made 1,000 decisions and responded to 100 demands. Morning is when your willpower is strongest and your attention is freshest. Claim it. No devices. Not nearby. Not on silent. Not face down. Gone. In another room. In a drawer. Out of sight and out of reach. Because if your phone is within arm's length, part of your attention will always be monitoring it, waiting for it, wondering what you're missing. Remove the temptation entirely. No excuses. This is the non-negotiable part. Not when you feel like it. Not when it's convenient. Every day. No matter what. Sick days, travel days, busy days, hard days. You show up, you do the thing. Even if it's a smaller version, even if it's imperfect. Consistency matters more than perfection. Step 3. Start small. If 20 minutes feels impossible, start with 10. If 10 feels impossible, start with 5. The goal isn't to prove how disciplined you are. The goal is to build a habit that lasts, and habits last when they're sustainable. You can always expand later. Once the pattern is locked in, once the practice feels automatic. But right now, you're just trying to establish the rhythm, to teach your brain that this time is protected, that this promise is kept, that this version of you is real. Consistency matters more than duration. It's better to do 5 focused minutes every day for a month than to do an hour once, and then quit because it felt too hard. The repetition is what rewires you. The daily return is what builds the pathway. So start small. Start manageable. Start with something you know you can sustain even on your worst day. And then do it, every day, without fail. Step 4. Track without judgment. Get a calendar, a journal, a piece of paper on your wall, something visual, something simple. And every day you complete your anchor practice, mark it. An X, a check, a star. Doesn't matter. Just mark it. Watch the pattern build. Watch the streak grow. Watch the evidence accumulate that you're changing, that you're different, that you're becoming the kind of person who does what they say they'll do. But here's the crucial part. Track without judgment. If you miss a day, don't spiral. Don't shame yourself. Don't decide you've failed and abandon the whole thing. Just notice it. Mark the gap and return the next day. That's it. That's the practice. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be consistent. And consistency includes the returns, the getting back up, the starting again. That's where the real strength lives. Not in never falling, but in always coming back. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. There's an entrepreneur who writes every morning for 20 minutes before he checks email. Not business writing, not content. Just thoughts, stream of consciousness, whatever's on his mind. He's been doing it for 3 years, and in that time, he's written 2 books, solved countless business problems, and built a practice that keeps him sane when everything else is chaos. The writing doesn't have to be good. It just has to happen. There's a parent who reads for 15 minutes after the kids are asleep. Not on a screen. A physical book. In a chair by the window. Every night. No matter how tired. No matter how tempting the couch and the TV. Just 15 minutes of quiet attention before bed. And that practice has become the most sacred part of her day. The thing she protects. The thing that reminds her she's still herself, even in the middle of raising small humans. There's a student who reviews his notes for 10 minutes before breakfast. Not cramming. Not stressing. Just reviewing. Reinforcing. Letting the information settle. And over time, his grades improved, not because he studied more, but because he studied consistently. Because those 10 minutes every morning compounded into understanding that no amount of last-minute cramming could match. The ritual doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to impress anyone. It doesn't have to look like productivity or achievement or anything other than what it is. A promise kept, a moment protected, a daily practice of choosing focus over distraction. But here's what happens when you do it long enough. The anchor practice becomes the center of gravity. Other habits start to organize around it. You start going to bed earlier so you can wake up in time for your practice. You start protecting your morning so nothing interferes. You start building boundaries because this matters and you're not willing to sacrifice it. Your confidence grows. Not abstract confidence, not hope, but earned confidence based on evidence. You're proving to yourself every single day that you can do hard things, that you can keep promises, that you're reliable. And that evidence accumulates until you start believing something new about yourself. You start believing you're the kind of person who keeps promises to yourself. And that belief changes everything. Because once you believe it, you act like it. You make different choices. You hold different standards. You become different. The anchor practice isn't just a habit, it's an identity shift. It's the daily practice of becoming someone new, someone focused, someone disciplined, someone who owns their attention instead of being owned by it. So here's the challenge. Choose your anchor. Right now, before you move forward, before you forget, before the motivation fades and you're back in the fog. What's the one thing, the one practice, the one promise you're going to keep to yourself every day? Choose your time. When will you do it? What time? Be specific. Write it down. Put it in your calendar. Make it real. And tomorrow morning, keep your promise. Just once. Just one day. Just one 20-minute block where you show up for yourself and prove that focus is still possible, that discipline is still available, that you're still in control. That's all. That's enough. Because every transformation starts with a single kept promise. And yours starts tomorrow. Once you've established your anchor practice, once that foundation is solid and the daily promise is kept more often than it's broken, you're ready for more. Ready to expand. Ready to deepen the work and build the kind of focus that doesn't just survive chaos, but thrives within it. The anchor is your starting point, but it's not your ending point. Think of it as the root system, strong, deep, essential. And now you're ready to grow branches, to add tools and strategies that expand your capacity and build resilience across your entire day. These aren't replacements for the anchor practice. They're reinforcements, layers that make everything stronger. And each one addresses a different dimension of focus, so that you're not just disciplined in one protected moment, but throughout the hours when life demands your best. Let's start with the focus sprint. You can't sustain deep focus for 8 hours straight. Your brain isn't built for that. Attention is a limited resource that depletes with use. So instead of trying to white-knuckle your way through marathon work sessions, you work in sprints. Short, intense, focused, 25 minutes of complete immersion in one task. No email, no messages, no checking anything. Just work. Deep work. The kind that requires your full cognitive capacity and produces real value. Then 5 minutes of rest. Stand up, stretch, look out a window, get water, let your brain recover, let the mental tension release. Don't scroll, don't check your phone, just rest. Actual rest, the kind that restores instead of drains. This is the focus sprint. And it works because constraint creates intensity. When you know you only have 25 minutes, you don't waste them. You don't ease into the work. You don't dabble. You dive in. You focus completely because the clock is ticking and the window is limited and you want to make it count. And because you know rest is coming, you can give everything to those 25 minutes without fear of burnout. You're not trying to sustain this forever. Just until the timer goes off. Just one sprint. Then you recover. You can batch these sprints across your day. 3 in the morning during your prime hours, 2 in the afternoon when energy dips, but you still have work to do. Each sprint is a contained unit of progress, a small win, a completed block, and those blocks add up faster than you think. 4 sprints is 2 hours of deep work, 2 real hours, not the fake kind where you're at your desk, but half your attention is elsewhere. The kind where you're fully present and fully productive, and you walk away knowing you moved something forward. This builds stamina without burnout, because you're not grinding. You're sprinting and recovering, sprinting and recovering, training your focus like an athlete trains their body, in intervals, with rest built in, with sustainability as the goal. But even with sprints, distractions will find you. They always do. And before you can defend against them, you need to know what they are. You need to see the patterns. That's where the distraction inventory comes in. For 1 week, track every interruption. Every time your focus breaks, write it down. What pulled you away? When it happened? How long you stayed distracted? Not with judgment, not with shame, just with curiosity. Like a scientist observing data. You'll notice things. Patterns you didn't realize existed. Social media at 10 in the morning when you're supposed to be working. Email spirals after lunch that eat your entire afternoon. The colleague who always stops by right when you're hitting flow. The inner restlessness that surfaces whenever the work gets hard. Awareness precedes control. You can't defend against an enemy you can't see. But once you see it, once you map the territory and identify the triggers, you can design defenses. If social media hijacks you at 10, delete the apps from your phone during work hours. If email spirals consume your afternoon, batch your responses into 2 scheduled blocks instead of checking constantly. If interruptions from others break your flow, close your door, put on headphones, or schedule office hours where people know they can find you. The distraction inventory isn't about perfection. It's about visibility. It's about turning unconscious patterns into conscious choices. And once something is conscious, you can change it. But even with awareness, even with defenses, not all hours are created equal. Your brain has rhythms, peaks and valleys, times when focus comes easily and times when it takes everything you have just to stay awake. This is where the energy map becomes essential. Pay attention for a week. Notice when you feel sharpest, when ideas flow, when hard work feels manageable instead of impossible. For most people, it's in the morning, the first 2 to 4 hours after waking, before decisions pile up, before cognitive load depletes your bandwidth, before the world gets its hooks in you. This is your biological prime time, your golden hours, and they're precious, sacred, not to be wasted on email or meetings or shallow work that any version of you could handle. Guard these hours like treasure. Schedule your deep work here, the thinking work, the creative work, the work that actually moves your life forward. Protect this time with boundaries that don't bend, because if you give away your best hours to tasks that don't deserve them, you're giving away your best self. Let shallow tasks fill the low-energy gaps. Respond to email in the afternoon when your focus is naturally declining anyway. Schedule meetings for late morning or early afternoon. Do administrative work when your brain is tired and deep thinking feels impossible. Match the task to the energy. High-value work during high-energy hours. Low-value work during low-energy hours. This isn't complicated, but it's powerful. Because when you work with your biology instead of against it, everything gets easier. And you can make it even easier with the pre-commitment strategy. Willpower is a finite resource. Every decision drains it. Every choice depletes it. So the fewer decisions you have to make in the moment, the more energy you have for the work that matters. Decide in advance. Tonight, before you go to bed, write down tomorrow's top 3 priorities. Not 10, not 20. 3. The 3 things that, if you completed them, would make tomorrow a success. Then when you wake up, you don't have to think about what to do. You already know. You just execute. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. So when morning comes and your bed is warm and your motivation is low, the friction is removed. The clothes are right there. The decision is already made. All you have to do is put them on. Use tools that remove temptation entirely. Website blockers that make social media inaccessible during work hours. Phone apps that lock you out of distracting sites. Plugins that hide comment sections and news feeds and infinite scroll. You're not relying on willpower to resist. You're making resistance unnecessary by removing the option. Find an accountability partner. Someone who's also working on focus. Someone who checks in. Someone who witnesses your commitments and celebrates your wins. External accountability creates internal motivation. When someone else knows you're supposed to show up, you're more likely to actually show up. Design your environment to make focused action the path of least resistance. Keep your workspace clear. Put your phone in another room. Have everything you need for your anchor practice ready and waiting. Make it easier to do the thing than to avoid the thing. And then the thing happens. Not because you're superhuman, but because you're strategic. The pre-commitment strategy isn't about controlling every variable. It's about reducing friction. About making the right choice the easy choice. About building a life where discipline is supported by structure instead of undermined by chaos. But here's what you need to understand about all of this. About the sprints and the inventories and the energy maps and the pre-commitments. None of it works without rest. Discipline without recovery is just burnout in slow motion. Focus without pause is just a countdown to collapse. You can't sprint forever. You can't push endlessly. The muscle needs rest to grow. The nervous system needs downtime to regulate. The mind needs space to integrate what it's learned. This is where the recovery ritual matters. Build rest into your life with the same intentionality you build work. Not as an afterthought. Not as what you do when everything else is done, but as a protected practice, a non-negotiable, a sacred pause. Walk without your phone, not to get somewhere, not to check off a task, just to walk, to move, to let your body reset and your mind wander. Some of your best ideas will come here, in the space between focused thinking, in the silence where creativity lives. Sit in stillness, even for 5 minutes. No input, no stimulation, no podcast or music or distraction, just you and the quiet. Let your nervous system settle. Let the constant vigilance ease. Let yourself just be without needing to produce or perform or prove anything. Let your mind wander. Give it permission to drift, to daydream, to make connections you couldn't make while forcing focus. The default mode network in your brain activates during rest. This is where integration happens, where insight emerges, where the pieces you've been gathering finally arrange themselves into something coherent. Take real breaks, not scrolling breaks, not switching tasks, real breaks, where you step away from all of it, where you let the tension release, where you remember that you are a human being, not a productivity machine. Honor your sleep. Protect your bedtime. Create a wind-down routine that signals to your body that work is done and rest is coming. Because all the focus techniques in the world won't save you from chronic sleep deprivation. A tired brain cannot focus. A depleted nervous system cannot regulate. Rest is not optional. It's foundational. The recovery ritual isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's understanding that sustainable discipline requires sustainable energy. That you can't pour from an empty cup. That the pause isn't where growth stops. It's where growth happens. So here's what you need to remember as you add these tools to your practice. They're not rules. They're experiments. Try them. Test them. See what works for your brain, your schedule, your life. Keep what serves you. Adapt what needs adjusting. Let go of what doesn't fit. You're not following a rigid program designed by someone who doesn't know you. You're building a personalized system, a way of working and living and focusing that matches who you are and where you're going. Some of these tools will feel natural immediately. Others will take time to integrate. Some you'll use every day. Others you'll return to when you need them. And that's okay. That's exactly how it should be. The goal isn't perfection. The goal isn't to implement every strategy flawlessly and never struggle again. The goal is to expand your capacity, to build resilience, to have options when chaos hits, and tools when focus falters, and strategies that support you instead of adding more pressure. You've built the anchor. That's your foundation. That's your proof. Now you're adding structure, adding depth, adding the kind of sophisticated practice that turns occasional focus into sustained discipline. And with each tool you integrate, with each experiment you run, you're becoming someone different. Someone stronger, someone more capable, someone who doesn't just survive chaos, but moves through it with grace. Keep building, keep practicing, keep trusting the process. Because you're closer than you think. The tools matter, the techniques work. But here's what most people miss. Discipline isn't just what you do in those 25-minute sprints or during your morning anchor practice. Discipline is how you live. It's the foundation beneath the foundation, the lifestyle that makes everything else possible. You can have the perfect morning routine and still fail if you're running on 4 hours of sleep. You can batch your focus sprints and still struggle if your body is fueled by sugar crashes and caffeine spikes. You can design the best productivity system in the world and watch it crumble if your environment fights you every step of the way. Sustainable discipline requires a sustainable life, and that means shifting from techniques to lifestyle, from what you do to how you live, from isolated moments of effort to integrated systems that support focus automatically. Let's start with the most overlooked and most essential element, sleep. A tired brain cannot focus, period. No amount of willpower compensates for chronic sleep deprivation. No productivity hack overcomes exhaustion. No morning routine rescues a mind running on fumes. When you're sleep-deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and sustained attention, goes offline. You lose access to the very capacities you're trying to build. You become reactive, impulsive, scattered. Not because you lack discipline, but because your biology is compromised. Sleep is where your brain consolidates memories, where it processes emotions, where it clears out the metabolic waste that accumulates during waking hours. where it repairs and restores and prepares for another day of focused work. Without adequate sleep, none of that happens, and you wake up already behind. So protect your sleep like you protect your income, like you protect anything precious, because it is precious. It's the foundation of everything else. Go to bed at the same time every night. Your body loves consistency. It has internal rhythms that respond to patterns. When you honor those rhythms, sleep comes easier. When you fight them, you lie awake, staring at the ceiling. Make your room dark. Actually dark. Not dim. Dark. Blackout curtains. No glowing clocks. No standby lights. Your brain produces melatonin in response to darkness. Light, even small amounts, suppresses it. Give your body the signal it needs to rest. No screens before bed. The blue light from phones and laptops tricks your brain into thinking it's still daytime. Your circadian rhythm gets confused. Your sleep quality suffers. Put the devices away an hour before you want to sleep. Read a physical book. Stretch. Sit in silence. Give your nervous system time to wind down. The best productivity hack isn't a new app or a better system. It's closing your eyes. It's getting 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep. It's waking up rested instead of dragging yourself through another foggy morning. Everything else builds on this. Without it, you're building on sand. And once you're rested, once your brain has the energy it needs, movement amplifies everything. The brain focuses better after the body moves. This isn't metaphor, it's physiology. Exercise floods the prefrontal cortex with oxygen. It increases blood flow to the hippocampus. It releases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which promotes the growth of new neurons and strengthens existing connections. A 20-minute walk resets attention, literally. If you're stuck on a problem or struggling to focus, get up and move. Walk around the block. Do some jumping jacks. Stretch for 5 minutes. And when you return to your work, you'll find your mind clearer, your focus sharper, your ability to think restored. Movement isn't a break from discipline. It's fuel for it. It's what keeps your brain functioning at its best. It's what prevents the stagnation that comes from sitting for hours without interruption. You don't need to become an athlete. You don't need to run marathons or lift heavy weights. You just need to move your body consistently, daily, in ways that elevate your heart rate and remind you that you're not just a brain in a jar, but an integrated system where body and mind support each other. Morning movement is especially powerful. It wakes up your nervous system. It signals to your body that the day has begun. It primes your brain for focus. Even 10 minutes, even a short walk, even stretching in your living room, do something. Because the days you move are the days you focus better, every single time. And just as movement fuels focus, what you eat shapes how you think. Blood sugar crashes destroy focus. You've felt this, the mid-afternoon slump, the brain fog after a heavy lunch, the inability to think clearly when you're running on empty or crashing from too much sugar. Your brain runs on glucose, but it needs stable glucose, not spikes and crashes, not the roller coaster that comes from processed food and refined carbs. Stable energy comes from whole foods, protein, healthy fats, complex carbohydrates that release slowly and sustain you. Processed food fogs the mind. It creates inflammation. It disrupts gut health, which affects brain health more than most people realize. It gives you a quick hit followed by a long crash, and in that crash, discipline becomes nearly impossible. You don't need a perfect diet. You don't need to count macros or eliminate entire food groups or follow some rigid eating plan. You just need stable energy, meals that keep your blood sugar even, snacks that sustain instead of spike, food that supports your brain instead of sabotaging it. And hydration matters more than most realize. Even mild dehydration impairs cognitive function, makes you tired, makes you irritable, makes focus feel harder than it needs to be. Drink water throughout the day, before you feel thirsty. It's simple, it's free, and it works. But even with sleep and movement and nutrition dialed in, you'll still struggle if your environment fights you. Your surroundings shape your behavior more than your willpower does. This is one of the most important truths about discipline. You're not operating in a vacuum. You're responding to cues in your environment. And those cues either support focus or destroy it. A cluttered desk creates mental clutter. Your eyes scan the chaos and your brain tries to process it all, and suddenly you're overwhelmed before you even start. Clear the desk. One surface, one task, nothing else competing for attention. An open door invites interruption. Every footstep in the hallway pulls your focus. Every conversation nearby fragments your attention. Close the door. Put up a sign. Create a physical boundary that signals to others and to yourself that this time is protected. A phone within reach is a phone that will be checked, even if it's face down, even if it's on silent. Your brain knows it's there. Part of your attention is always monitoring it, waiting for it. So remove it. Put it in another room, in a drawer, somewhere you can't see it, or hear it, or reach for it without deliberate effort. If you have to fight your environment every day, you'll lose. Willpower is finite. Environment is constant. So design your space to make focus effortless. Make the right choice, the easy choice. Make distraction require effort instead of focus requiring effort. This isn't about perfection. It's about removing friction, about creating conditions where your best self can show up without having to battle your worst impulses every single moment. And just as environment shapes you, so does community. Isolation breeds drift. When you're alone in your pursuit of discipline, it's easy to slip, to make exceptions, to tell yourself it doesn't matter because no one's watching. But when you're surrounded by people who value focus, who protect their time, who keep their promises, their standards become your standards. Their discipline reinforces yours. Find your people. Join a group, a writing circle, a morning workout crew, an accountability pod. Doesn't matter what it's called. What matters is that you're not doing this alone, that you have witnesses, that you have people who expect you to show up and celebrate when you do. Find an accountability partner, someone who's also building discipline, someone you check in with daily or weekly, someone who asks the hard questions. Did you do your anchor practice? Did you honor your commitments? Not to judge you, but to keep you honest, to remind you why this matters when motivation fades. Let their discipline inspire yours. Watch how they handle setbacks. Notice how they prioritize. Learn from their strategies, and let them learn from yours. Because community isn't just about support, it's about elevation. It's about becoming better together than you could become alone. And as you build all of this, the sleep and the movement, and the nutrition and the environment and the community, you need one more practice to hold it all together. Reflection. End each week with 10 minutes of honest review. Not harsh judgment, not self-criticism, just honest assessment. What worked this week? What didn't? Where did you lose your way? Where did you shine? Look at your anchor practice. How many days did you show up? What got in the way on the days you didn't? Was it a real obstacle or an excuse? What can you change next week to make showing up easier? Look at your focus sprints. Did you protect your prime hours? Did you batch your deep work or let shallow tasks consume you? What patterns emerge? What needs adjusting? Look at your energy. How was your sleep, your movement, your nutrition? Did you honor your body or push through exhaustion? What small change would make next week more sustainable? This isn't self-criticism, it's course correction. You can't improve what you don't measure. You can't adjust what you don't notice. And 10 minutes of reflection gives you the data you need to make next week better than this one. Write it down, not just in your head, on paper, in a journal, something tangible, something you can look back on months from now and see how far you've come. See the patterns across time. See the growth that's hard to notice day by day, but undeniable when you zoom out. This is how discipline becomes sustainable. Not through force, not through grinding, but through systems, through lifestyle, through building a life that supports focus instead of fighting it, sleep that restores, movement that energizes, nutrition that stabilizes, environment that enables, community that elevates, reflection that refines. These aren't separate practices, they're interwoven, each one supporting the others, each one making the others easier. Together, they create something bigger than any single technique or tool. They create a life where discipline isn't something you force, it's something you live. Make your life a greenhouse for focus. Control the conditions, optimize the environment, tend to the foundations, and then watch what grows. Not overnight, not without effort, but steadily, sustainably, inevitably, because you're not just building habits anymore, you're building a life, and that life is becoming one where focus isn't the exception. It's the baseline, it's who you are. You've built the practices, you've established the lifestyle, you've created the conditions for focus to thrive. And maybe part of you still wonders, is this real? Will it actually work? Or is this just another thing you'll try and abandon when it gets hard? Let me ground this in something solid, something that removes doubt, something that shows you this isn't motivational fluff or wishful thinking. This is biology. This is neuroscience. This is your brain responding exactly as it's designed to respond when you give it the right inputs. Transformation isn't magic, it's mechanics. And once you understand the mechanics, you stop hoping for change and start engineering it. Let's start with the most fundamental concept, neuroplasticity. Your brain is not fixed. It's not hardwired at birth to be scattered or focused, disciplined or distracted. It's plastic, malleable, constantly rewiring itself based on what you do, what you practice, what you repeat. Every time you resist distraction, you strengthen the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain responsible for executive function, for impulse control, for sustained attention, for overriding automatic responses in favor of chosen ones. And like any muscle, it gets stronger with use. Every time you complete your anchor practice, you deepen the neural pathway that makes focused attention easier to access. The neurons that fire together wire together. That's not a metaphor. That's biology. When you repeatedly engage the same mental process, the connections between those neurons strengthen. The pathway becomes more efficient. The action becomes more automatic. Repetition creates structure, and structure becomes identity. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. This is why showing up every day builds more than showing up perfectly once. Because your brain changes based on patterns, not on single heroic efforts. It's the accumulated weight of all the days you practiced that rewires the circuitry. And over time, focused attention stops being something you force and starts being something you are. Not because you were born that way, but because you built yourself that way. One practice at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. Now let's talk about attention itself, because attention isn't a single thing. It's three interconnected systems working together, and understanding how they work helps you understand why chaos feels so overwhelming and why discipline works when you apply it correctly. The first system is the alerting network. This is what keeps you vigilant, scanning for threats, monitoring your environment for anything that might require immediate response. It's your ancient survival system, and it's still running full-time. Chaos overwhelms this system with false alarms. Every notification, every ping, every interruption. Your alerting network treats them all as potential threats. So it keeps you on edge, keeps you scanning, keeps you ready to respond. And when you're in that state, focus is impossible because your nervous system is convinced there's danger everywhere. The second system is the orienting network. This directs your attention toward new stimuli, toward novelty, toward whatever's different or interesting or potentially rewarding. It's what made your ancestors explore new territories and discover new food sources. But distraction hijacks this system. Social media, news feeds, email, they're all engineered to provide constant novelty. Your orienting network can't help itself. It pivots toward the new thing, and the new thing, and the new thing, until you're completely fragmented and nothing gets sustained attention. The third system is executive control. This is your prefrontal cortex at work. This is what allows you to override the alerting system when there's no real threat. What allows you to resist the orienting system's pull toward novelty when you have something more important to focus on. This is discipline. This is choice. This is you taking command instead of being commanded. And here's what matters. You're not fighting your brain. You're training it. You're strengthening the executive control network so it can manage the other two. So it can filter false alarms. So it can resist novelty when focus is required. So you can choose where your attention goes instead of having it stolen by whatever screams loudest. Every time you practice, you're training this system, making it stronger, making it more capable. Until eventually, it doesn't take effort to focus. It takes effort to stay distracted, because you've rewired the default. But there's another piece of this puzzle that explains why distraction feels so good and why deep work feels so hard at first. And that piece is dopamine. Dopamine is the neurochemical of motivation and reward. But it doesn't reward you for having something. It rewards you for seeking something, for anticipating something, for the possibility that the next thing might be better than the last thing. Every time you check your phone, you get a tiny hit of dopamine. Not from what you find, from the act of checking, from the anticipation, from the maybe. Maybe there's a message. Maybe there's a like. Maybe there's something interesting. And that maybe is enough to keep you coming back. Distraction feels good because it delivers constant micro-hits of dopamine. Little bursts of pleasure throughout the day. Your brain learns to associate scrolling with reward. And once that association is formed, resisting becomes hard because you're not just resisting distraction. You're resisting the neurochemical payoff your brain has learned to expect. Deep work doesn't deliver those micro-hits. Not at first. It's hard, it's uncomfortable, it requires effort without immediate reward. So your brain resists it. Why would I do this hard thing when I could do this easy thing that feels good right now. But here's what changes everything. The dopamine system recalibrates. As you build the practice of focused work, as you complete your anchor practice day after day, as you stack focus sprints and see progress accumulate, your brain starts to associate focus with reward. Not immediate reward, but real reward, accomplishment, completion, the satisfaction of doing something meaningful instead of something merely pleasant. And over time, the dopamine pathways shift. Focus starts to feel better than scrolling. Deep work starts to feel more rewarding than shallow distraction. Not because distraction stops being pleasurable, but because focus becomes more pleasurable. Eventually, you'll reach for your work the way you used to reach for your phone. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because your brain has learned that's where the real satisfaction lives. But only if you stay the course long enough for the shift to happen. This doesn't happen in a week. It happens over months, over hundreds of repetitions, over enough accumulated evidence that your brain finally believes the new pattern is worth keeping. And while you're building these new patterns, while you're training your attention and recalibrating your dopamine system, there's another network operating in the background that most people completely ignore. And it might be the most important one of all, the default mode network. When you rest, when you stop actively focusing, when you let your mind wander, this network activates. And it's not idle. It's processing, integrating, consolidating, making connections between ideas you've been working with, solving problems you couldn't solve while trying, creating insights that only emerge in the space between focused thinking. This is where creativity lives, where breakthrough ideas happen, where you suddenly understand something that's been confusing you for weeks, not during the work, during the rest. But constant stimulation blocks this network. If you never let your mind wander, if you fill every moment with input and activity and distraction, the default mode network never gets to do its job. You never integrate what you've learned. You never make the connections. You never experience the insight. Boredom isn't the enemy. It's the gateway. Those moments in the shower, on a walk, staring out a window, when your mind drifts and you're not trying to control it. That's when the magic happens. That's when your brain does the work you can't force it to do. So build rest into your life, not as wasted time, but as essential time, as the space where everything you've been practicing settles and integrates and becomes part of who you are. And finally, we need to talk about stress, because you can do everything right, the anchor practice, the focus sprints, the lifestyle foundations, and still struggle if your nervous system is dysregulated. Chronic stress shrinks the hippocampus. This is the part of your brain involved in memory and learning. Stress literally makes it harder to form new memories and retrieve existing ones. And it hijacks the prefrontal cortex. Your executive control goes offline. Your ability to focus, to make decisions, to regulate impulses, all of it diminishes when you are chronically stressed. You can't focus when your nervous system thinks you're under attack. When your amygdala is firing constantly, signaling danger, you're stuck in survival mode. And in survival mode, long-term planning and deep thinking are luxuries your brain can't afford. It's just trying to keep you alive. This is why practices like deep breathing matter, why meditation works, why movement calms you. They're not just nice to have, they're essential. They calm the amygdala. They tell your nervous system that you're safe, that there's no immediate threat, that it's okay to shift out of survival mode and into a state where focus is possible. Discipline requires a regulated nervous system. if you're constantly anxious, constantly on edge, constantly feeling like you're about to be overwhelmed, no amount of productivity techniques will help. You have to address the nervous system first. You have to create safety. You have to restore regulation. And once you do, everything else becomes easier, because your brain can finally access the capacities it's been locked out of. The prefrontal cortex comes back online. Executive control returns. Focus becomes possible again. So here's what all of this means. Here's why it matters. You're not hoping for change, you're engineering it. Every choice you make rewires your brain. Every time you resist distraction, you strengthen executive control. Every time you complete your anchor practice, you deepen the neural pathway. Every time you rest, you allow integration. Every time you regulate your nervous system, you restore function. This is cause and effect. This is biology responding to input. This is your brain doing exactly what it's designed to do when you give it the right conditions. Science proves it. Neuroplasticity was real. The attention networks can be trained. Dopamine systems recalibrate. The default mode network needs space. Stress regulation restores function. This isn't theory. It's documented. It's measurable. It's happening in your brain right now as you practice these principles. You're becoming different. Not metaphorically, literally. Your neural architecture is changing. Your brain is rewiring. Your identity is shifting. And now it's just a matter of time. Time and consistency. Time and practice. Time and patience while the biology catches up to the behavior. You're not broken. You're not flawed. You're not fundamentally incapable of focus. You're a biological system responding to inputs. And when you change the inputs, the system changes. That's not hope. That's science. And science doesn't lie. Keep practicing. Keep building. Keep trusting the process. Because your brain is already changing. You're already becoming. And every day, you're one step closer to the person you're working to be. The science is clear. The systems are built. The foundation is solid. And now comes the part no one talks about enough. The part where everything you've built gets tested. Where theory meets reality. Where discipline stops being something you practice in ideal conditions and becomes something you need in the middle of a storm. Because chaos will come for you. It always does. And discipline isn't proven in calm, it's proven in crisis. So let's prepare you. Let's talk about what happens when life gets hard and how to navigate it without losing everything you've built. Let's start with the most inevitable one. The one that will happen and the one that will test you more than any external crisis. You will fail. You will break the streak. You'll wake up late and skip the anchor practice. You'll sit down to work and scroll instead of start. You'll make the plan and then abandon it the moment things get uncomfortable. And when it happens, a voice will rise up. The old voice. The one that's been waiting for this moment. See? You're not disciplined. You were right all along. This was just temporary. Just another thing you tried and couldn't sustain. You're still the same person you always were. Nothing has changed. This is the moment that determines everything. Not the failure itself, but what you do next. Because here's the truth. One missed day doesn't erase 100 kept ones. One moment of distraction doesn't undo months of practice. One broken promise doesn't mean you're incapable of keeping promises. It just means you're human. And humans stumble. Humans have bad days. Humans make mistakes. That's not evidence of failure. That's evidence of being alive. So when it happens, don't spiral. Don't let one missed day become 3. Don't let one scroll session become permission to abandon everything. Don't let the shame convince you that if you can't be perfect, you might as well quit. Treat it like turbulence on a flight. Uncomfortable, unsettling, but not catastrophic. The plane isn't crashing, you're just hitting rough air. And what do you do in turbulence? You acknowledge it. You breathe. You stay in your seat. And you trust the plane to stabilize. Same here. Acknowledge what happened. I missed today. I scrolled instead of worked. I broke the promise. Okay, that's the fact. Now breathe. Let the shame pass through you without attaching to it. And then return to the plan. Tomorrow morning you show up. You do the anchor practice. You keep the promise. Not to make up for yesterday, but because today is a new day and the practice continues regardless of what happened before. That's the practice. Not never falling, but getting back up. Not maintaining perfection, but maintaining momentum. Not being flawless, but being relentless in your return. The streak isn't what matters. The return is what matters, because the person who returns after falling is stronger than the person who never fell. They've proven something deeper. They've proven they can fail and still choose themselves, still choose discipline, still choose to keep going. Now let's talk about when stress peaks, because it will. Life compresses sometimes. Deadlines stack, conflicts erupt. Loss arrives without warning, and when it does, focus is the first thing to go. Unless you've trained for this, this is where the anchor practice becomes your emergency protocol. Not something you do when everything is calm, but something you return to when everything is chaos. When the stress hits and you feel yourself spiraling, you don't try to do everything. You don't attempt to maintain your full routine. You do one thing, one focused thing, and you do it completely. 10 minutes of controlled breathing, slow inhales, slow exhales. Feeling your nervous system shift from panic to presence, that's the anchor. A 5-minute walk, outside if possible. No phone, no agenda, just movement, just air. Just the reminder that your body still works and the world still exists beyond the crisis. That's the anchor. A single focused task, the most important one. The one that actually moves something forward. Not 20 tasks halfway. One task, completely. That's the anchor. You're not trying to be a productivity machine during a crisis. You're trying to stay grounded, to remain functional, to prove to yourself that even in the middle of chaos, you still have some control, some agency, some ability to choose what gets your attention. And that one anchored moment can carry you through the rest of the day. Because it's proof that you're not completely overwhelmed. Proof that you can still focus when it matters. Proof that discipline doesn't require perfect conditions. It just requires one deliberate choice in the middle of the storm. Then there are the days when motivation dies, and it will die. You'll wake up and feel nothing. No drive, no enthusiasm, no desire to do any of it. The anchor practice will feel pointless. The focus sprints will feel impossible. Everything will feel like it's not worth the effort. This is not failure. This is being human. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions fluctuate. They rise and fall like weather. You can't control them. You can only decide whether you'll let them control you. Discipline is what you do when motivation is gone. That's the entire point. If you only showed up when you felt like it, you wouldn't need discipline. You'd just need enthusiasm. But enthusiasm fades, feelings change, and if your practice depends on feeling good, it won't last. So show up anyway. Do a smaller version if you need to. Cut the anchor practice from 30 minutes to 10. Do one focus sprint instead of 4. Write 3 sentences instead of 3 pages. But keep the promise. Even if the performance is weak, even if it feels like it doesn't matter, because momentum matters more than perfection. The habit of showing up matters more than the quality of what you produce on any given day. You're not trying to be impressive. You're trying to be consistent. And consistency means showing up, especially when you don't feel like it. Those are the days that build real discipline. Not the easy days, the hard ones. The days when every part of you wants to quit and you show up anyway. Those days prove something. They build something that motivation alone could never build. And then there are the seasons of chaos you didn't choose. Illness that knocks you down for weeks. Transitions that upend your entire routine. Crisis that demands all of your attention and energy. Times when maintaining your full practice feels impossible because life is asking more of you than you have to give. This is when you adapt, not abandon. This is when discipline shows its true nature. Because discipline isn't rigidity. It's not adhering to a system no matter what. It's resilience. It's bending without breaking. It's protecting what matters most and letting the rest be messy. Shorten the anchor practice. 5 minutes instead of 30. 1 minute instead of 5. Whatever you can manage. The duration doesn't matter. The continuation matters. You're keeping the thread alive. You're maintaining the identity. You're reminding yourself that even in the middle of chaos, you're still the person who shows up. Simplify the system. Let go of the advanced tools. Let go of the perfect routine. Protect one thing. The anchor practice, the morning walk, the evening reflection. One thing. And let everything else be flexible. Let everything else adjust to the reality of what this season requires. This isn't giving up. This is adapting. This is understanding that discipline serves life, not the other way around. That the goal isn't to maintain a pristine system. The goal is to remain grounded through whatever comes. And sometimes that means the system gets stripped down to its most essential element. And that's okay. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. And finally, there's one more test, one that catches more people than all the others combined. The test of success. When things are going well, when the practice is locked in, when you're hitting your stride and everything feels easy, the temptation is to coast, to skip the rituals because you don't need them anymore, to think you've arrived and the work is done. This is the trap. The reason it's going well is because of the rituals. The reason you're focused is because of the anchor practice. The reason you're disciplined is because of the daily return to the practices that built that discipline. Take them away, and you'll drift. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, gradually, until one day you look up and realize you're back where you started. Wondering where your focus went, wondering why discipline feels hard again. Success isn't the end of the practice, it's evidence that the practice works. So don't celebrate by abandoning the foundation. Celebrate by deepening it, by honoring it, by recognizing that this is what got you here and this is what will keep you here. The rituals aren't training wheels you remove once you've learned to ride. They're the bike itself. They're the vehicle. They're the thing that carries you, and they'll carry you as long as you keep using them. So when you succeed, when things are going well, when people start noticing your focus and your output and your consistency, remember why. Remember the anchor practice. Remember the early mornings. Remember the days you showed up when you didn't feel like it. Remember the system that built this and keep it, protect it, deepen it, because the person who forgets how they got somewhere usually ends up back where they started. Here's the truth that ties all of this together. The truth about failure and stress and low motivation and chaos and success. The truth about what discipline really is. Discipline isn't about never falling. It's about falling less, recovering faster, and trusting yourself to get back up. That's the real mastery. Not perfection, not flawlessness, not some superhuman ability to never struggle. The real mastery is in the return, in the resilience, in the capacity to stumble and still keep walking, to fail and still keep trying, to lose the thread and still find it again. You will be tested. Life will throw everything at you, and sometimes you'll handle it perfectly, and sometimes you'll fall apart. And both are okay. Both are part of the path. What matters is that you keep walking, keep practicing, keep returning. Because that's what builds unshakable discipline. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of commitment, the kind that survives storms and still chooses to show up the next day. That's who you're becoming. Not someone who never falls, but someone who always gets back up. And that makes all the difference. You've walked a long road, longer than you realized when you started. And now it's time to look back and see how far you've come, to recognize what's changed, to acknowledge who you've become. Remember where you started. Remember that morning when you woke up already defeated, when the notification screamed for attention and your own goal sat abandoned in the corner, when you couldn't remember the last time you kept a promise to yourself, when the gap between who you were and who you wanted to be felt so wide you wondered if you'd ever cross it. You were scattered, overwhelmed, drowning in distraction, and beneath it all, that quiet voice asking if change was even possible, if maybe this was just who you were, if maybe some people were disciplined and others weren't, and you'd drawn the short straw and that was that. And now, here you are. Not perfect, not invincible, not immune to chaos or free from struggle, but different, fundamentally different, in ways that matter. You didn't just learn a few tricks. You didn't just memorize some productivity hacks or adopt a new morning routine. You rebuilt your relationship with attention. You changed the way you interact with your own mind. You transformed the way you move through the world. You stopped apologizing for who you weren't. Stopped carrying shame for being scattered or distracted or overwhelmed. Stopped believing that discipline was some genetic gift you lacked. And you started building, started practicing, started proving to yourself, one day at a time, that you were capable of more than you believed. And the proof accumulated, day after day, week after week, until the evidence was undeniable. You are disciplined, not because you were born that way, but because you built yourself that way. One anchor practice at a time, one kept promise at a time, one deliberate choice at a time. Discipline isn't a gift some people have. It's a practice anyone can build, and you built it. You are the proof. So let me paint you a picture of who you've become. Not who you're trying to be, who you are right now, the person emerging from all this practice, the identity that's crystallizing as the old patterns fall away. You wake up with clarity. Not every morning, not perfectly, but more often than not, you know what matters today. You've decided in advance. You don't lie in bed scrolling, wondering what to do. You know, and knowing removes the friction between intention and action. You protect your time without guilt. When someone asks for something that doesn't serve your goals, you say no. Not with elaborate explanations, not with apologies, just no. Thank you, but no, because you understand now that every yes to someone else's priority is a no to your own. And your priorities matter. Your time matters. You matter. You start what you commit to. Not just the easy things. Not just the things you feel like doing. The hard things. The important things. The things you used to avoid because starting meant risking failure, and not starting meant you could keep the fantasy alive that you might have succeeded if only you'd tried. But you try now. You start. You show up. And more often than not, you finish. You finish what you start. Not always on the timeline you planned. Not always perfectly. But you see things through. You keep your promises. You follow through. And that simple act, finishing, changes everything. Because finished work creates value. Finished work builds confidence. Finished work proves you're not just a dreamer. You're a doer. Chaos still swirls around you. The world hasn't gotten quieter. The demands haven't decreased. The notifications still ping. The urgencies still pile up. But you move through it differently now. You move through it with a quiet center. A place inside that doesn't get pulled by every current. A stillness that holds regardless of what's happening around you. You don't react to every pull. You don't respond to every demand. You don't let urgency dictate your day. You choose, deliberately, intentionally, based on what matters, not what's loudest. And that choice changes everything. Because once you reclaim the power to choose where your attention goes, once you become the director of your own focus instead of a passenger being swept along by circumstances, your life becomes yours again. You're not just surviving chaos anymore. You're navigating it. With purpose, with clarity, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they can handle whatever comes because they've built the internal capacity to stay grounded when everything else is spinning. This is who you've become. Not someone without struggles. Not someone who never gets distracted or overwhelmed or tired. But someone who has tools, who has practices, who has an identity built on evidence that when you say you'll show up, you show up. When you say you'll focus, you focus. When you say it matters, you act like it matters. And that identity is unshakable. Not because it's perfect, but because it's earned. Built from the ground up through hundreds of small moments where you chose discipline over distraction, where you kept the promise even when you didn't feel like it, where you returned after falling and proved that failure isn't fatal. But let me be clear about something. This isn't the end of the journey. This is the beginning of a new chapter. A different kind of journey. One where the practices are established and the challenge shifts from building discipline to maintaining it. From proving you can to proving you will. Consistently. Over time. Through seasons and storms and success. There will be setbacks, days when the fog returns, when you wake up scattered and the old patterns resurface, and you wonder if anything really changed. Those days will come, and when they do, you won't panic. Because now you have the map, you have the tools, you have the anchor practice, and the focus sprints, and the lifestyle foundations that support everything. And most importantly, you have proof. Proof that you've done this before. Proof that you can return. Proof that one bad day doesn't erase months of progress. Proof that you know the way back because you've walked this path enough times that it's familiar now, comfortable, home. The setbacks will be shorter, the recovery faster, the trust in yourself deeper. Because you're not starting from scratch anymore. You're returning, and there's a profound difference between the two. And here's what most people don't realize until they've walked this path. Here's the gift that emerges once discipline becomes identity. The ability to focus in chaos isn't just about productivity. It's not just about getting more done or achieving more goals or proving something to the world. It's about something deeper, something more essential. It's about presence, about being fully in your life instead of distracted from it, about actually experiencing the moments that matter instead of being half present while your mind is somewhere else. It's about looking your child in the eye when they're talking to you and actually hearing them, not nodding while you're mentally composing an email or planning tomorrow or wondering what you're missing on your phone. It's about doing work that matters, work that uses your gifts, work that creates value, work that makes you feel alive, not work that just fills time because you're too scattered to do anything meaningful. It's about conversations where you're really there, meals you actually taste, walks where you notice the world around you, moments of quiet where you're comfortable in your own company because you're not running from yourself anymore. It's about becoming someone who keeps their promises, especially the ones they make to themselves, because those are the promises that matter most. Those are the ones that build self-trust. Those are the ones that determine whether you become who you are capable of becoming or stay who you've always been. So imagine 6 months from now. Really imagine it. See yourself waking up. See the morning routine that's so automatic now you don't even think about it. See the anchor practice that grounds your day. See the focused work that happens in your prime hours. See the boundaries you protect without guilt. Imagine a year from now. See the project you finished, the habit that's locked in, the identity that's solidified, the person in the mirror who you actually recognize and respect. Imagine 5 years from now. See the body of work you've created, the relationships you've deepened because you were actually present for them, the life you've built because you protected your attention like it was sacred. Because it is sacred. Not because life got easier. It won't. Life will still be life. Complex, demanding, chaotic. But you got stronger. You got clearer. You got more grounded. And that made all the difference. The work you'll create won't be perfect, but it will be real. It will be yours. It will exist because you showed up and did the work instead of just thinking about it. The relationships you'll deepen won't be without conflict, but they'll be genuine. They'll be rich. They'll be built on presence instead of proximity, on attention instead of just time. The peace you'll feel won't be constant, but it will be available. You'll know how to find it. You'll know the practices that return you to center. You'll know that no matter how chaotic things get, you have a place inside yourself that remains still. And that knowledge changes everything, because you're not hoping anymore. You're not wishing. You're not waiting for circumstances to cooperate. You're just living, deliberately, intentionally, with your attention where you want it, with your focus where you need it, with your life feeling like your own. The path is yours now. You've walked far enough to know it's real, to know it works, to know that every promise kept builds on the last until the person you're becoming is simply who you are. Walk it with patience. This isn't a race. This isn't about speed. It's about direction, about consistency, about the accumulated weight of days lived intentionally. Walk it with grace. You'll stumble. You'll forget. You'll have days that don't go as planned. And that's okay. That's expected. That's human. Grace means returning without judgment, continuing without shame, knowing that the practice includes the imperfection. And when someone asks how you stay so focused, so disciplined, so calm in the chaos, smile. Because you know the anchor practice they can't see, the early mornings they didn't witness, the days you showed up when you didn't feel like it, the times you fell and got back up, the slow, patient work of building something that looks effortless from the outside but was earned through countless small choices made over and over again. You built this. One day at a time. One promise kept. One anchor dropped in the middle of the storm until the storm became irrelevant. Not because it stopped, but because you became the stillness all along. And that stillness? It's yours now. It's who you are. It's what you've earned. And nothing can take it from you unless you choose to let it go. So don't. Don't let it go. Keep practicing. Keep returning. Keep building. Keep becoming. Because the world needs people like you. People who can focus when everyone else is scattered. People who can stay grounded when everything is spinning. People who keep their promises and finish what they start and show up when it matters. The world needs your attention, your presence, your work, your gifts. And now you can finally give them. Not because you have more time, but because you own your time. Not because you have more energy, but because you direct your energy. Not because you're special, but because you're disciplined. And discipline, as you now know, isn't a trait. It's a practice, and the practice is yours. Forever. Whenever you need it, wherever you are, however chaotic things get, you know the way. You've walked it. You've proven it. And now it's just a matter of continuing, of walking it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, until the walking itself becomes who you are. Welcome home. To clarity, to focus, to yourself. You've been here all along. You just had to build the path to find it. And now you have.